The Chapter 1, which is the introduction and the background of the study, will be discussed by Simon Grivador and Maria Malyapre.
As members of the society, one of the necessities of human beings is to interact and to socialize with our fellow humans. Although due to circumstances, it is advised to stay distant to our fellow colleagues. But generally speaking, interaction is a way of human life. The relationship formed through this behavior is what we call social attachment. Social attachment is the bond that we form with our friends, colleagues, and family members. Social attachments can be linked to an individual's behavior towards an environment. According to Travis Hirschi's social control theory, individuals who have a strong bond to their peers are less likely to engage in deviant behavior than those that don't. St. Paul College of Bukawi is an institution that proudly advocates the values integration of their students. The character formation is of utmost importance to the school administration. The researchers were motivated to investigate the relationship between social attachment and deviant behavior. But guided by the social control theory developed by Travis Hirschi back in 1969, the variables were directly rooted from the aforementioned theory, though it is limited only to two aspects of the required to follow the rules that are stated in the handbook. Though the sanctions and penalties that the handbook states is clear, it cannot be ignored that there are still students that do not conform by the standards. Said students who gained an offense by violating the handbook engage in an act of deviant behavior. Deviance is the violation of norms in a specific environment. In this case, doing an action that doesn't fit with what is written in the handbook. Deviance comes in various forms. It may be formal or informal. Like what I said, Travis Hirschi's social control theory states that the people with weak bonds are less likely to exhibit deviant behavior. The students' relationship towards their social attachments, especially with their parents and their schoolmates, are most likely to predict the kind of behavior that the students will display with the environment they're within. The rationale of the theory is to study and determine the relationship between social attachment and deviant behavior among the grade 10 students of St. Paul College of Bukawi. The main problem is there a correlation between social attachment and deviant behavior? It will answer the specific questions. What is the profile of the grade 10 students in terms of the following? Gender, social attachment, level of attachment, deviant behavior. Number 2, which gender is more attached to their parents? Number 3, which gender is more attached to their peers? And number 4, is there a significant relationship between social attachment and deviant behavior? For the theoretical framework, social control theory, Travis Hirschi developed this theory and it gained prominence during the 1960s. The main topic of the research is derived from the very idea of the control theory. The properties and components of this theory perfectly complements the research that the researchers are conducting. It tells the significance of how social attachment matters in committing acts of deviance. Social control theory states that the interpersonal connections with other people influence the tendency to commit deviant behavior. Individuals tend to comply to social norms because they are worried about what their attachments might think of what they did. Attachment theory. Attachment theory was developed by John Bowlby in 1969, which emphasizes the importance of a secure and trusting mother-infant bond on developmental and well-being, whereas attachment is described as an extraordinary emotional connection between a care and an individual that involves exchange of comfort, care, and affection. Differential association theory. Acts of deviance can vary depending on the time period and location it was committed. The absence of social bond is not only the cause for deviant behavior, as previously stated. Deviance can vary depending on the location. At times, people deviate from the standard set of norms because it contradicts with different social norms. Different societies in general have different beliefs and guidelines that affect our perception. It influences people and how they react to a different environment. Anomy theory. The anomy theory of deviance by Merton 1957 suggests that deviance comes to the surface when people fail to achieve culturally valued goals in a legitimate way. Example of these goals are wealth, socioeconomic status, and power. People will display deviant behavior and break the rules set by society when they do not find to attain these goals in a legitimate way.
Hypothesis. For the null hypothesis, there is no correlation between social attachment and deviant behavior. For the alternative, there is correlation between social attachment and deviant behavior. Definition of terms. The conceptual definition of social attachment according to Bangate, Dugdale, Adam, and Beck, the strong or weak bond produced by an individual's relationships and interaction with others, and such relationships could be with family members, close friends, close relatives, peers, and figures of power. Conceptual definition of parental attachment according to Ravani, Casmanes, Hadford, and Forahav. The relational bond existing between a parent or guardian and child. Parental attachment is established through proximity, safety, and security that offered by a parental or guardian and experienced by a child. Conceptual definition of peer attachment, the bond of an individual in large set of people who interact with one another as a matter of opportunity. Operational definition, social attachment, parental attachment, and peer attachment, was measured through the scores of the respondents on the standardized test, the Inventory of Parent and Peer Attachment or IPPA, by Armsden and Greenberg, formulated in 1987. The conceptual definition of deviant behavior by Abrams, the violation the social norms and conventions, a series of actions that contradict the standards accepted in the society, that is manifested in the form of inadaptability, unstable psychological process, self-actualization disorder, or avoidance of ethical and aesthetic control over one's behavior. 25 minor offenses listed on the Student Handbook of St. Paul College of Bukawe, year 2019-2020. Operational definition. Deviant behavior was measured through the frequency of the respondents' engagement on the 25 listed minor offenses in the Student Handbook of St. Paul College of Bukawe. Significance of the study. Social relationship could be one of the main factors affecting in the individual's behavior. This relationship could be either an advantage or a disadvantage towards an adolescent's behavior development. This research aims to discover if this social attachment have an effect towards an adolescent's display of deviant behavior. The study may benefit the student as they are the main concern of the conduct of this research. They aid the students to have an in-depth understanding on the importance of social relationship to their behavior and overall being their respective environment. It may also provide beneficial information to their teachers and their parents. The results of this research may also be an aid to the future researchers who may want to engage themselves in such topic. They will gain a better understanding regarding the importance of having themselves strongly related or attached to their parents or guardians at home, and be responsible for the ones who are they relating themselves to, for this may affect their overall being. For the teachers and school administrators, the study may enrich their knowledge about the possible causes of the deviance among the students. This could also aid them to identify methods to engage the students more to be drawn into school and come up with ways that could control the deviance among the students in schools. For the parents, They will become aware how essential it is to be fully be involved towards their children's life and be concerned regarding the behavior they are exhibiting in school and in the community. For the future researchers, the findings of the study may provide them useful information for their future explorations engaged in such similar topic. Scope and delimitation. This study This study mainly focused on two major variables: the social attachment and deviant behavior of the grade 10 students of St. Paul College of Bukawi, academic year 2019 to 2020. In this study, social attachment as a major variable was confined to the participants' parental and peer attachment. These sub-variables measured through a standardized instrument named the Inventory of Parent and Peer Attachment, or IPPA, that evaluated the relationship between the participant and his maternal or paternal figure and his relationship or attachment to his peers. For this study, the deviant behavior of the participant was delimited to the 25 minor offenses written formally on the Student's Handbook of St. Paul College of Bukawi, academic year 2019 to 2020. Deviant behavior was measured through the frequency of a respondent's engagement on this listed offenses. The respondents of the study was the grade 10 student of St. Paul College of Bukawi as participants. The study was conducted during the second semester of academic year 2019-2020. The participants were chosen for the study due to the reason that their ages 16 to 17 years old are the ones who are in the stage of middle adolescence, which is the transition period from puberty to legal adulthood, and are the ones who are starting to mature and struggle for more independence from their parents. Scope and delimitation. This study mainly focused on two major variables: the social attachment and deviant behavior of the grade 10 students of St. Paul College of Bukawi, academic year 2019 to 2020. In this study, social attachment as a major variable was confined to the participants' parental and peer attachment. These sub-variables measured through a standardized instrument named the Inventory of Parent and Peer Attachment, or IPPA, that evaluated the relationship between the participant and his maternal or paternal figure and his relationship or attachment to his peers. They will gain a better understanding regarding the importance of having themselves strongly related or attached to their parents or guardians at home, and be responsible for the ones who are they relating themselves to, for this may affect their overall being. For the teachers and school administrators, the study may enrich their knowledge about the possible causes of the deviance among the students. This could also aid them to identify methods to engage the students more to be drawn into school and come up with ways that could control the deviance among the students in schools. For the parents, they will become aware how essential it is to be fully be involved towards their children's life and be concerned regarding the behavior they are exhibiting in school and in the community. For the future researchers, the findings of the study may provide them useful information for their future explorations engaged in such similar topic.
The methods and procedures used in the study will be discussed by Jailky and De Jesus.
Research design. The research design we utilize is a correlational research design because the researchers would like to know if there is a correlation between the social attachment and deviant behavior of the grade 10 students of SBCP. Respondents of the study. The respondents of the study are the grade 10 students of St. Paul College of Bukawi. The grade 10 students are chosen because of their age, 16 and 17, because according to Allen and Waterman 2019, they are the ones who are starting to mature and struggle for the independence from their parents. The population size are composed of 182 students across the 4 sections. Researchers used the Slovene formula to compute the sample size. The formula result is 126 respondents, which will be going to be divided into 4 sections. For the first 2 sections, there were 32 respondents, and for the remaining 2 sections, there were 31 respondents. The data gathering instrument to measure the attachment of the respondents to their parent and peer, they use the IPPA, or the Inventory of Parental and Peer Attachment. According to Armstead and Greenbridge, the IPPA assesses 3 broad dimensions, which is the degree of mutual trust, quality of communication, and extent of anger and alienation. For the deviant behavior, the researchers listed a series of minor offenses from the Student Handbook of St. Paul College of Bukawi. With the use of those 25 minor offenses, the researcher will have an idea on what level of deviant behavior they have. Data gathering procedure, the specialists by and by circulated the joint surveys, estimating social connections, which is the parental and peer, and free conduct to the respondents of each area at a specific period inside a specific school day. The surveys were additionally recovered actually by the specialists after the respondents complete the process of replying. After the recovery of the surveys, the analysis classified the appropriate responses so as the arrange, register, and group of the scores of the students. For the statistical treatment, the accompanying measurable apparatuses were utilized in the treatment of the accumulated information in the examination. For the descriptive statistics, the researchers utilized frequency and percentage distribution tables to organize and classify the overall data. The data was gathered in the study using those tables that it shows the profile of the students, which includes their social attachment, the level of attachment, and their deviant behavior. Likert scale was used in order to classify, interpret, and analyze the scores of the respondents. There are 2 scales formulated to identify their attachment and deviant behavior. The first Likert scale is for the attachment, with a scale of 100.80 to 120, with the verbal interpretation of almost always or almost attached. 81.60 to 100.79, with the verbal interpretation of often attached. 62.40 to 81.59, with the verbal interpretation of sometimes attached. 43.20 to 62.39, with the verbal interpretations of not very often attached. And lastly, 24 to 43.19, with the verbal interpretations of almost or never attached. For the deviant behavior, with a scale of 105 to 125, with the verbal interpretation of always. 85 to 104, with the verbal interpretation of often. 65 to 84, with the verbal interpretation of seldom. 45 to 64, with the verbal interpretation of rarely. And lastly, 25 to 44, with the verbal interpretation of never. For the inferential stat, the researchers use the Pearson product moment correlation in order to identify if there is a correlation between social attachment and deviant behavior.
The summary of findings and conclusions will be discussed by yours truly, Liza Marie Glorioso. For the summary of findings, the first specific problem to be addressed is what is the profile of grade 10 students in terms of gender, social attachment, level of attachment, and deviant behavior. In terms of gender, there were more male students with 51% out of 126 respondents than female students with the remaining 49%. In terms of social attachment, there are 103 students, or 81.75% of the 126 respondents, are attached to their peers, while the remaining 23 respondents, or 18.25%, are attached to their parents. In terms of level of attachment towards the parents, out of 100%, 1.59% are always attached to their parents, 13.49% are often attached, 7.14% are not very often attached, 77.78% are sometimes attached, and 0% of the students is almost or never attached to their parents. In terms of level of attachment towards the peers, out of 100%, there are 2.38% who are always attached to their peers, 56.35% are often attached to their peers, 37.30% are sometimes attached, 3.18% are not very often attached, and 0.79% are almost or never attached to their peers. In terms of deviant behavior, out of 100%, the majority, with 43.65% of the students, rarely commit the listed minor offenses. 38.89% never commit to the listed minor offenses, 12.70% seldomly commit, 4.76% often commit, and 0% of the students always commit to the listed minor offenses. The second specific problem to be answered is there a significant relationship between level of attachment and deviant behavior? For the level of parental attachment of the students, the computed Pearson product moment correlation value, or R value, is negative 0.14, which falls within the correlation scale from negative 0.2 to 0. It is interpreted that there is no correlation between the level of parental attachment and the deviant behavior of the students. For the level of peer attachment of the students, the computed Pearson product moment correlation value, or R value, is negative 0.18, which falls within the correlation scale from negative 0.2 to 0. It is interpreted that there is no correlation between the level of peer attachment and the deviant behavior of the students. The third specific problem to be answered is there a significant relationship between social attachment and deviant behavior? Social attachment and deviant behavior resulted to Pearson product moment correlation value, or R value, of negative 1. According to the correlation scale, negative 1 reveals that a very strong negative correlation is present between social attachment and deviant behavior. It is interpreted that an inverse relationship is present between the two variables. For the conclusions, based on the results of this study, the following conclusions were drawn. First conclusion: most students are more attached to their peers than to their parents. In support of this are the results of the study, that out of 126 respondents, the majority, which is the 81.75%, are attached to their peers, while the remaining 18.25% are attached to their parents. For the second conclusion, the level of attachment does not affect deviant behavior of an individual. The study's results revealed that regardless whether an individual is always attached or almost or never attached to his parents or peers does not affect his capability of displaying deviant behavior towards his environment. The R values negative 0.14 and negative 0.18 in the study proved that there is no existent correlation between the level of attachment of the respondents and their deviant behavior. For the final conclusion, social attachment affects the display of deviant behavior of an individual. The study resulted to an answer that the presence or lack of social attachment affects an individual's display of deviance in the environment where he belongs to. In support of this is the social control theory by Travis Hershey in 1969. The theory states that social attachment, known as interpersonal connections of an individual with other people, influence their tendency to commit deviant behavior. According to Dornbush, Erickson, Laird, and Wong in 2001, the adolescent's attachment to family and school impedes the frequency, prevalence, and intensity of the involvement on deviance among the students. Additionally, according to Harris, McCoy, and Cui, on 2012, even though adolescence seeks for autonomy, lack of parental control on adolescent stage is positively correlated with acts of delinquency continues to the stage of young adulthood. The recommendation from the 5th chapter will be discussed by Jose Rafael Santos.
Based on the findings and conclusions, the following are recommended. School administration. The researchers would like to recommend the school administration to develop programs and activities for students to further explore the implications of deviance. In this way, students' awareness will be raised regarding the importance of proper demeanor and the avoidance of acts of deviance in school and at home. It is also recommended to identify methods to help the students to be more drawn into school and search for ways that could possibly control the deviance among the students. Also, the school administration should take the responsibility of communicating with the parents and or guardians of the students regarding the behavior of the child at school. Lastly, the school administration is recommended to provide warm and encouraging counseling services to the guidance office to cater to the students' behavioral conflicts. For the teachers, the researchers would like to recommend that teachers will explore ways to communicate with their students and take a constant check regarding their state of being inside the classroom. They are also encouraged to understand the student's history and background to gain knowledge about the root cause of the student's behavior displayed at school. It is essential that students are monitored by their teachers. Parents. Researchers would like to recommend to the parents to prioritize fostering a strong relationship with their child, especially during the teenage years. The results have shown that among the respondents, only 23 students are closely tied with their parents. They should also consider exploring ways to communicate and reach out to their children for a better establishment of relationship, especially during puberty. Parents should also encourage their child to participate in school, communal, and religious activities so that they will be able to develop a bond with society. It is highly recommended that parents should dedicate more time and attention to their children. For the students, the researchers would like to recommend that students establish strong bonds with their parental figures and family members, as well as friends. They are also encouraged to take their time in order to develop and explore themselves so that they may be able to understand their own selves, especially their behavior towards their relationships on the community. It's also recommended for the students to take initiative in the formation of relationships with other members of the community. For the future researchers, the researchers would like to recommend to conduct further studies on the effects of social attachment to the social functioning of the individual. In the study, only the relationship between social attachment and deviant behavior were identified. It is also recommended to conduct studies that can help determine the effective means in fostering strong and lasting relationships with people and society. Future studies focus on identification of other factors that can lead to deviance may also be conducted by the future researchers. Lastly, it is recommended to conduct further studies to discover if power, socioeconomic status, and wealth have an effect on the display of deviance among individuals. That's all.